to the meeting, the fifth meeting of the Foreign Affairs and International Development Committee.
On April 20th, 2020 and September 30th, 2020, and the order of reference of the committee on October 13th, 2020. The committee is meeting to commence consideration of votes 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, L25 and L30 under Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development, vote 1 under International Development Research Center, and vote 1 under International Joint Commission Canadian section. The comité va également examiner.
The committee will also consider the Minister of International Development's mandate later.
Hybrid format, and it is also the first meeting as part of the House of Commons pilot project for webinar formats. The pilot project is for public committee meetings and available only to members and their staff. Members may have remarked that the entry into the meeting was much quicker and that they immediately entered as an active participant. All functionalities for active participants remain the same. Staff will be non-active participants only and can therefore only view the meeting in gallery view. I
would like to thank our witnesses for helping us with the pilot project, and I hope that your experience will be good.
Take the opportunity also to remind all participants that in this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. And this is also highlighted by the fact that it was mentioned by Speaker Rota on September 29th, 2020. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would outline just a few customary rules to follow. Witnesses and members may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available at the bottom of your screen. Les députés qui participent en personne.
Members participating in person will need to follow the usual procedures as if everyone were attending in person. Please abide by the rules set down by the Board of Internal Economy concerning masks and health protocols.
Speaking, please wait until you're recognized by name. If you're on video conference, please click on the microphone to unmute yourself. And if you're in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the proceedings and verification officer. When you have 30 seconds remaining in your questioning time, I will signal you by holding up this yellow sheet of paper.
Now, I would like to warmly welcome our witness, the Honourable Karina Gould, Minister of International Development. We have Leslie McLean with us, the Deputy Minister for International Development, Alyssa Goldberg, Assistant Deputy Minister for Strategic Policy, Caroline Leclerc, Assistant Deputy Minister for Partners for Innovation, Peter McDougall,
Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, Corporate Planning, Finance and Information Technology, and Shirley Carruthers, Director General, Financial Resources Planning and Management Bureau. For the benefit of members, I'd like to quickly note that votes on the main estimates will take place next week after we've heard from both ministers. Minister Gould, it's my pleasure to give you the floor for your initial presentation of 10 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It's really a delight to be with everyone and to see all of you right across the country virtually and to have this conversation.
I'm pleased to be here with you today in order to introduce the main estimates for 2020 and 2021 for international development. At the beginning of the day, we, of course, did not know that we were going to have the pandemic, and many countries are facing difficult situations in order to maintain social cohesion and economic well-being. We need to take action to decrease extreme poverty including by increasing access to development, to education. Over 1.83 billion people in the world live in poverty and face many challenges, often aggravated by inequalities and in many cases by long humanitarian crises, in part due to climate change. We know that the pandemic has made things worse. We know that between 85 and 110 million people in extreme poverty are facing very difficult situations, and we know that development situations are made worse, especially for women and children. Exclusion and marginalization are increased, but we need to realize that the problem is not just elsewhere in the world, but the pandemic is affecting the health and prosperity of Canadians as well. And we need a coordinated world response to this situation. And until we have not developed more sustainable economic systems, then we will not be able to deal with these problems. Canada has demonstrated its commitment to take steps to deal with the devastating effects of the pandemic around the world. COVID and the economic disruptions it is creating has resulted in the worst situation economically since the Second World War. The government is working strategically to make Canada's efforts count. We are strengthening our ability to meet the Sustainable Development Goals in health and providing more fair access to treatment and vaccines. We are also, as a second point, working to stabilize economies that are affected by the supply chain problems and helping developing countries. And we are also helping those who are most vulnerable through our humanitarian assistance efforts. We are helping by providing food aid and socioeconomic assistance as well.
Impact of climate change. For example, Canada is supporting the World Bank Canada Clean Energy and Forest Facility to help reduce deforestation and forest degradation through sustainable forest management. Canada is also supporting the Canadian Climate Fund for the private sector in the Americas, Phase 2, which aims to catalyze private sector investments in climate change mitigation and adaptation across the Latin America and Caribbean region. Recognizing that the Paris Agreement aims to limit global temperature increases, a majority of Canada's climate finance programming targets mitigation efforts primarily through renewable energy. I would like to note that significant progress continues to be made in advancing the Feminist International Assistance Policy, and the majority of Canada's commitments are on track to be achieved. In the 2018-19 report to Parliament on the Government of Canada's international assistance, we outlined how the policy is being pursued and what results have been achieved. It was the first combined report on international assistance as part of our efforts to increase transparency to Canadians. However, I should flag that new funding to help respond to the COVID-19 pandemic will have an impact on the department's ability to meet targets for the current fiscal year. More broadly, over the past fiscal year, I have also been focused on realizing the commitments outlined in my mandate letter as Minister for International Development. As of March 2020, we fulfilled the 2015 commitment to allocate $3.5 billion for maternal, newborn, and child health, as well as the 2017 commitment to allocate $650 million towards sexual and reproductive health and rights. Preliminary statistics show that in 2019-20, Canada met its commitment and is on track to meeting the 2021-2022 target of directing 95% of Canada's bilateral international development assistance to initiatives that advance gender equality. The Women's Voice and Leadership Initiative now supports local women's organizations and movements in over 30 countries and regions. We are moving forward with supporting innovative programming by Canadian small and medium organizations in partnership with local organizations. Equitable access to education is critical for everyone, particularly the most vulnerable. To this end, I will be launching an international campaign in early 2021 to ensure that refugee and displaced children get the education they need and deserve. Additionally, we are well on our way to directing 10% of our bilateral international development assistance towards education initiatives, currently at 9%. Officials are also developing new programming to address other key issues, including the unequal distribution of unpaid care work. We are also supporting women in developing countries who are at the front lines of climate adaptation efforts through new investments such as a $150 million loan to the International Fund for Agricultural Development to support climate-smart agriculture in developing countries, and by providing $20 million for the Canada CARICOM Climate Adaptation Fund. Canada continues to be recognized for our leadership on innovative financing in support of the SDGs. We co-chair the UN Group of Friends on SDG financing in New York. Building on this work, Prime Minister Trudeau, alongside Prime Minister Holness of Jamaica and UN Secretary General Guterres, is leading a process with leaders from around the world on financing for development in the era of COVID-19 and beyond, to encourage inclusive and creative solutions to finance the recovery. I also remain committed to ensuring that Canada's international assistance is effective, transparent, and accountable. For example, Global Affairs has streamlined funding applications and is implementing the civil society partnerships for international assistance policy. Furthermore, restructuring the international assistance envelope has provided Canadians and the international community with clearer, more comprehensive information on our international assistance programming. Finally, our government is also increasing Canada's international assistance and will be doing so as we work toward 2030 in support of the SDGs. In 2021, we allocated $4.9 billion toward international assistance objectives, an increase from $4.6 billion the previous year. Mr. Chair, committee members, our government is working hard to implement the Feminist International Assistance Policy, especially during this unprecedented pandemic, seeking to build a more peaceful, inclusive, and prosperous world. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Minister. We are now going to go to our first round, which consists of 6-minute interventions. And first up is Mr. Genuis. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you, Minister, and I want to thank you for your service to Canada in this important role. My first round of questions will be about Canada's involvement in the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, a Beijing-controlled development bank, which is part of the Chinese government's neo-colonialist Belt and Road Initiative. Is the money that the government of Canada contributes to the AIIB considered part of the government's development assistance?
Thank you, Mr. Genuis, for the question. And I note that we first started working together 4 years ago on this committee when I was the parliamentary secretary. With regards to the AIIB, this is part of Canada's development assistance. However, it is managed through Finance Canada and not through Global Affairs Canada.
Thank you. How much money has the government sent to the AIIB to date?
I would have to refer to one of my colleagues on the call, but as I noted, this is Finance Canada, not Global Affairs Canada, and so it's really the Minister of Finance who is the governor for the AIIB. I'm the governor for the Asian Development Bank.
Right, but it does, I believe, as you've just said, contribute to what you perceive to be Canada's overall ODA spending.
So the Asian Infrastructure Bank is a multilateral development bank. Canada, alongside like-minded countries like Germany and France and South Korea, are members of this. And I would note that the AIIB also co-funds projects with other partners with whom we work, such as the World Bank or the Asian Development Bank. But again, these questions are better placed for the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Minister. They are questions about international development, and I'd like to know your perspective on them. In particular, as it pertains to our foreign policy, is it reasonable to infer from Canadian participation in the AIIB that Canada supports the Belt and Road Initiative?
The AIIB and the Belt and Road Initiative are not linked initiatives. They are separate. The AIIB undertakes development projects in Asia Pacific. Canada's participation in the AIIB is part of our engagement in the Asia Pacific region. We work with the AIIB, and they adhere to multilateral standards with regards to the development projects that they fund. And I would note that the AIIB does not directly fund projects that are associated with the Belt and Road Initiative.
Okay. Minister, I would somewhat disagree with that, and in my disagreement, I would reference page 63 of your own transition binder, which reads as follows: the Chinese government has been pushing for reforms to the global governance structure to reflect its rising status. China is no longer a rules taker, but increasingly a rules maker in the global arena, as exemplified by its establishment of the AIIB. The page says later, the Chinese government has established alternative multilateral forums such as the AIIB and Belt and Road Initiative to provide soft loans and infrastructure investment with fewer conditions. China has utilized these alternative forums to leverage its economic prowess, to gain regional influence
et afin d'exporter son modèle de gouvernance partout dans le monde. Je me demande si la ministre pourrait clarifier. Est-elle d'accord avec ses propres fonctionnaires cités? Monsieur le Président, avant que la ministre réponde, j'aimerais...
back while I'm speaking.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let me just take that point. We'll suspend briefly to see if that's something that can be fixed quickly.
I'm not hearing it anymore, so maybe it's been resolved already.
Okay, perfect. Minister, please.
Okay, hopefully that'll come off my time, and go ahead, Minister.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Genis. I would just note that you're making an inference that there is a connection between the two initiatives that was not actually stated in the transition binder. They mentioned two initiatives to be aware of, but they did not explicitly link them. What I would say is that what is very important for Canada is, and whether it is within the multilateral development bank system, whether it is other multilateral organizations, that we continue to push everyone, whether they are traditional OECD DAC donors or new donors, to abide by the best rules of aid effectiveness and ensuring that they follow the rules. And part of Canada being a member of the AIIB means that we have a seat at the table, are able to have a seat when it comes to governance and to push China and other actors to follow the best principles when it comes to international assistance.
Okay, thank you, Minister. The crucial point from that transition binder, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that the AIIB is part of China's strategic agenda to push forward its model of governance around the world. And I don't know why Canada would want to be part of that. So I'd be curious for your thoughts on why Canada is part of a body which your own public servants are telling you is aimed at exporting the Chinese state model of governance. And I also want to ask you about this argument about a voice at the table. You said this gives Canada a voice at the table. Canadian membership in AIIB, which costs us hundreds of millions of dollars, gives us 1.03% of voting power. Now, my staff went through records of meetings. As far as we were able to identify, Canada wasn't mentioned in any agenda items and made 2 recorded statements in board meetings over the entirety of our membership thus far. So what is the purpose of having a voice at the table if Canada has ostensibly spoken twice in the course of our presence there? And if the objective of this bank is to advance the strategic objectives and governance models of the Chinese government. Why are we putting taxpayers' dollars? And by the way, how much more good could we be doing around the world if those dollars were put towards actually helping children and vulnerable people who are suffering from malnutrition and lack of education?
Just a very brief answer, please, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would say, I mean, Canada puts close to $1.1 billion into health and nutrition and human dignity initiatives around the world. And of course, as I mentioned from the outset, I'm not the governor for the AIIB. That is the Minister of Finance. I'm the governor for the Asian Development Bank. And so while it is part of our international development assistance overall, it's not part of the portfolio that I manage.
Thank you very much, Minister. Our next round of questions goes to Ms. Sahota. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And Minister Gould, it's nice to have you at committee today. I hope Oliver is doing well. Definitely miss seeing him around the House of Commons. And it looks like he's grown quite a bit. My first question is along the lines of the Feminist International Assistance Policy objectives to have 95% of Canada's bilateral international development assistance target or integrate gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. I believe like 6% is what is being spent now, and we want to get to about 15% in the years 2021 and 2022. I was wondering if you can highlight how we intend to get there, what different programs, what where this money is going, and if you can elaborate on some of the help that is being provided and will be provided through this program.
Certainly. Well, thank you so much, Ruby, for the question. And it's nice to see you as well. And Oliver is doing great. So thank you for asking. But when it comes to the Feminist International Assistance Policy and our gender equality targets, we have set a target for ourselves that 95% of all of our development assistance would incorporate gender equality within their programs. And we are on track to meet that commitment for this year. I would note that since we brought in the Feminist International Assistance Policy in 2017, Canada has become the top donor in the OECD DAC for gender equality. And so that is a huge achievement. And kudos, of course, to the former minister, Minister Marie-Claude Bibeau, for putting that forward and driving that agenda, and to all of the incredible public servants at Global Affairs Canada who have made that a reality. And we have also committed to having 15% of our programming be classified as GE3, a Gender Equality 3 project, which means that the primary objective of the project is to enhance gender equality. And so whether those are projects that are advancing women's rights, fighting gender-based violence, are advancing sexual health and reproductive rights, including increasing women's political participation. These are the kinds of projects that we're talking about. And in fact, we are on target, set to meet that target for this year as well. And that remains a top priority for us as a government moving forward. And I would note one of the projects that I'm quite proud of is the Women's Voice in Leadership program. And, this came about because of conversations that the previous minister and myself, when I was parliamentary secretary, had when we were traveling and visiting partners around the world, and hearing specifically from women's rights organizations, and women's rights activists saying that, they were doing incredible and difficult work, but didn't have the funding to back them up. And so, fast forward 3, 4, 5 years, and we now have Women's Voice in Leadership programs in over 30 countries, and are supporting hundreds of women's rights activists. And when I was in the Democratic Republic of the Congo earlier this year, had the opportunity to meet with some of the women's rights activists that Minister Bibeau met with when she was in Kinshasa in 2017. And they expressed their gratitude for being part of this program, for the fact that a Canadian minister traveled to Kinshasa, heard their concerns, listened, and acted upon them. And now they were being supported by Canada to do their really important work.
I wanted to follow that up with, I think that's a great achievement that Canada has become the top donor. I think that's an incredible achievement. Can you list some of the countries that are receiving the most assistance through our bilateral international assistance programs?
I can. So, Canada is on track to have bilateral assistance programs with about 44 countries this year. The top 10 recipients are Ethiopia, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Syria, Mali, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, Jordan, Nigeria, and Colombia. But of course, we also have multilateral projects and regional projects that provide development assistance to well over 100 countries around the world. But those are the top 10.
Yesterday, it was very interesting. In the House, we were debating C3, the bill that is going to require judges to take training when it comes to sexual assault. And Mr. Genis was also very interested about assistance during that debate that Canada could provide to other countries in the area of helping women in developing countries be able to access justice and protections for themselves when it comes to some of these terrifying atrocities that are committed against mostly women. Can you describe any programs that may be assisting in that area?
Yeah, so again, when I was in Kinshasa, I had the opportunity to visit a hospital that receives victims of sexual violence and speak with some of the survivors and hear their stories. And it's a project that we fund in collaboration with UNFPA. It's called JAD. And what it does is it not only trains hospitals and healthcare workers to receive and diagnose sexual violence, but it also provides support, legal support for them to take their cases through the court system, and then it also helps them, find to build up self-confidence as well, whether it's through education or economic opportunities. So that's one example. But we also work
Minister,
right.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think
sorry.
we'll have to leave it there, but
Sure.
feel free to circle
Thank you.
back to additional examples in subsequent rounds. J'aimerais passer.
I would like now to call on Mr. Bergeron for 6 minutes, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Minister for being with us today. I would like to say hello to her from my colleague, the member for Lac-Saint-Jean, who couldn't be here this afternoon, unfortunately. So I'm very pleased to be with the committee for this discussion. Some people have suggested that in Canada's efforts to secure a seat on the Security Council against Norway and Holland, it was pointed out during that time that Canada was spending a lot less on ODA than other countries. And do you think that that argument actually played against Canada when it came to time for the vote? Thank you for that question, and also for those greetings. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you well. That's better now. So thank you for those greetings, and please pass mine along to your colleague who does such a great job, and I'm happy to work with him. With respect to the Security Council seat, I think that there were a number of factors. What I would say is that a lot of our developing country partners supported Canada in its efforts to secure a seat, and I've had good conversations around the world with our partners there, and they are very pleased with the work that we have done to support them and that we are doing. But There are various factors. There are the other two countries that started their work earlier to try to get a seat. Along the same lines, Minister, we know that the objective, the development assistance objective are 0.7% of GDP, but we are at 0.27%. So that doesn't compare well with countries like Norway and Holland, who spend a lot more on official development assistance. So I understand what you said about some countries not considering that a major factor when they decided which country to support. But when it comes to expectations of developed countries to spend 0.7%, and we're only spending 0.27%, that's well below that level. So can you tell me what the timetable is for Canada to increase its ODA? Of course. I would also like to confirm that Canada is the 10th highest donor in volume. So it's not necessarily the percentage in that case, but it's the actual volume of assistance that's provided internationally as well. The government in 2018 contributed $18 billion in additional funds to increase development assistance. The government, or rather the Prime Minister, also announced that official development assistance would be increased. And this year, in the General Assembly at the UN, the Prime Minister once again confirmed that our development assistance would increase. I would also point out that this year we announced over $1 billion in additional funding to address the COVID situation. So we are right now increasing our development assistance. Very well. Mr. Chairman, we know that the Prime Minister, right after his election, announced with a great deal of pomp that Canada was back at the United Nations, talking about international development, climate change, peacekeeping efforts, and on all three of those fronts, Canada has disappointed expectations despite the spectacular announcements by the Prime Minister. So I would like to know whether we have an actual timetable over the next few months or years to translate those good intentions into reality so that they don't disappear, and that Canada makes a strong, concrete contribution more than we are doing right now. Thank you. As I have just said, we have already taken steps to increase our assistance, and we are moving in the right direction. We are spending billions of dollars more, and we have announced over $1 billion this year alone, and we have already made significant contributions that will be spent before the end of the year. Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Bergeron.
Second goes to Madame McPherson for 6 minutes. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister for being here today. Of course, I've got more questions than I will be able to get to in 6 minutes, but luckily I go last, so some of my questions have been asked already. I will I just want to get a little bit more detail about ODA. I'm sure that won't surprise you at all, Minister. Could you tell me what the expectation is for the percentage of GNI that we'll be spending? Is it 0.27%? Is that the expectation? And the increased amount that you talk about, what will that increased percentage be? So I don't really want to know volume. I actually would prefer to know the percentage if I could.
Well, I'm not sure that I could give you the percentage, unfortunately, because that will require us to do some calculations that I don't have right here in front of me, but I could tell you the volume because that is the ultimate dollar amount. And I think, you know, again,
I want to know based on our economy. Is there any way that you could get those numbers and that percentage calculated and given out to the committee at a later date?
Sure, we could do that. I mean, it will ultimately depend on what our ultimate GNI number is for this year, but certainly we could get that to you. I just don't have it, you know, at my fingertips right now.
Okay. And you know, like MP Bergeron before me, we were really excited to see, of course, that the Prime Minister included an increase investing more in international development in the throne speech, that he did talk about it at the United Nations General Assembly. So we look forward to seeing it. And will we see it in the next budget, those increases, the next budgetary update? Will that be in there?
Will we have a budget?
You would have
Mr. Bergeron,
Ms. McPherson, that's a question that you'll likely have to ask my colleague, the Minister of Finance, because I'm not the one responsible for creating our overall government's budget, but I share your excitement. I was also very excited to see it in the throne speech and also the Prime Minister's commitment and also the announcements that he has made and the $1.1 billion that has been already announced and is rolling out this year.
Okay, and in terms of that ODA that's being spent, could you also, when you do calculate some of those numbers, perhaps you could let us know, maybe you know that now, what percentage of the money that we spend through Global Affairs Canada for international development goes to multilateral, what goes to bilateral, and what goes to partnership branch?
I would ask Shirley Crothers to confirm that for us. Sorry, Shirley.
Yeah, no worries. I actually do have I have those numbers on my desk in front of me. If you just give me a couple of minutes, I could provide the actual numbers and the
sure. And I could ask a question in the meantime, perhaps. So one of the next questions that I have is around our contribution to COVAX, and of course I'm delighted that Canada has contributed over $500 million to that initiative. However, we have seen that Canada has also bought, more than 10 times what we require in terms of a domestic response. And so it does seem reasonable that our international response would be equal to our domestic response, considering that, all modeling shows that not only will we save about 28% more lives, but our economic outcomes will be much better as we recover. Will there be further investment in COVAX and in making sure that less fortunate countries have access to vaccines in a timely manner?
Well, thank you. Sorry, I was going to call you Heather, but Ms. McPherson, for the question. And I share your passion for access to equitable vaccines, which is why I was so pleased that we made the contribution to both the COVAX facility for self-financing countries, but also to the AMC to assist low-income countries access the vaccine. And I would note that Canada contributed the same amount to the AMC that we did to the COVAX facilities. And Canada is actually the second largest contributor to the COVAX facility after the United Kingdom. And when it comes to the ACT Accelerator, which is with regards to vaccines, access to vaccines, therapeutics, diagnostics, and health systems, Canada is the fourth largest contributor overall in the world. At this point in time. Obviously, when it comes to vaccines, we understand that this is going to be an ongoing process. We've been very involved with research and development and are having lots of conversations with Gavi, with the WHO, with other partners involved in the ACT Accelerator process. We're continuing to encourage other countries to also join and to increase their contributions. And we'll continue to have conversations to see what Canadian leadership will continue to look like within this facility.
So probably no more additional funds from Canada, though, at this time.
I would say that we are having active ongoing conversations, and we are working with our international partners to make sure that COVAX is a success.
Thank you, Minister. And then just to follow up a little bit, one last question, if I can squeeze it in. In terms of Canada's response to COVID-19, I know that you're aware that the sector has asked for a 1% of our federal COVID spending would go to international development and go to a COVID response. Could you talk about what we've done and perhaps indicate when the funds are new funds and when the funds are funds that have been reallocated from within the Global Affairs Canada budget?
Yes. So as I said, we have announced $1.1 billion to respond to COVID specifically. I will maybe get Shirley just to confirm the numbers, but I believe that is new. That is new additional funding. We had $200 million that came from existing reference levels that was announced back in April, and then in addition to that, we have reallocated $350 million internally to respond to COVID-19 from existing resources. So if you add all of those together, I mean, we're well over $1.5 billion, but $1.1 billion is new resources from that are not existing. But perhaps Shirley can.
Thank you very much for that. Maybe you can follow up in a subsequent round. We will now go to the second round of questions. And just to remind colleagues and witnesses, these rounds consist of tighter timeframes. They're 5 minutes or 2.5 minutes. Just encouraging everybody to be as concise as possible in their questions and answers. The first questioner will be Mr. Genuis for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say I'm very struck by the lack of response to what is the most predictable and most basic question, Minister. Everybody knows that, generally speaking, international development assistance levels are measured as a percentage of gross national income. And for you to say it requires calculation that I don't have in front of me to know what our current levels are or what the projected levels is I think, quite surprising. Going back to your transition binder, I note it says the ODA ratio is currently projected to be redacted % in calendar year 2019. So the lack of a willingness to talk about that percentage it seems consistent. And we could talk about projects and impacts all we like, but everybody knows, I think, that the ability to run a certain number of projects or not is dependent on the level. So I would like to try to get more clarity from you about the government's policy with respect to ODA levels. In particular, you have spoken about the government's intention to increase ODA spending every year towards 2030. We know, though, that of course, because of inflation, every dollar becomes a little bit less worth less every year. So I want to know from you, Minister, if the government policy is to increase ODA levels in nominal terms, in real terms, or as a percentage of gross national income.
Thank you, Mr. Genuis. With all due respect, when the question was posed by Ms. McPherson with regards to what impact, the percentage of our ODA will be moving forward, as it stands right now, we're projected at, 0.28%. However, with the additional resources that have come online, particularly in recent months, and fluctuating changes in GDP, I mean, that is something that we will be able to get back to the committee with greater detail as those numbers are changing. And so what I am doing right now is committing to provide the numbers that I have on hand, which is with regards to total overall percentage. And it is always interesting from a Conservative member of Parliament.
Thank you, Minister. If I could ask, and I think you were going to talk about the Conservative record, the fact that under Stephen Harper, aid as a percentage of GNI was actually much higher. It was always over 0.3%. I wonder if you want to confirm that current spending as a percentage of GNI is lower than it was at all points under the Harper government. But I also want to pin you down specifically on the commitment of the government. Is the government committing to increase aid spending in real terms, in nominal terms, or as a percentage of GNI? Which of those three is it?
Actually, Mr. Genis, I was going to comment that your party campaigned on cutting ODA by 25% last election. So it's a little interesting that you're so concerned about this. So I hope that this means that you're actually supportive of us increasing international assistance. I hope that's what this is about. And perhaps your party would go on the record.
Minister, you're the minister. I'm not. Maybe I will be at some point. But for the time being, you're the minister. What is the commitment of the government? You know, I'll give you one more chance to answer it, and if not, the record will show that you didn't answer it. Is the commitment to increase nominal spending, real spending, or spending as a percentage of GNI? Which is it?
Well, I hope that your interest in this is a confirmation
That's
that your
not the
party
question, Minister.
would increase international assistance. And I would note that when Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, he actually froze any increases to the international assistance budget. And when we came into power, we increased it by $2 billion in 2018, and we're continuing.
Minister, are you answering the question?
Point of order, Mr.
Are you prepared to answer the
Chair?
question?
Dr. Fry, sorry, point of order.
Point of order. I know that we disagree a lot at committees, depending on our party objectives or party ideologies. But I do think that we should do one thing on a committee. We should respect the witness. The minister has been asked to answer, and every time she tries to answer, the honourable member cuts her off. Could we let us hear what she has to say, please, if he really wishes to hear the answer? Thank you.
Thank you for the point of order, Dr. Fry. Mr. Genis, just 1 second, please. There's an additional argument to be made here, which is that it's impossible for translation and interpretation to follow if members talk over top of witnesses and vice versa. So I would just encourage all members, please, to ask their questions and then wait for the answer, just like we do in the House of Commons.
Mr. Chair, just on that point of order, I hope that members will understand that this is my time, that I have limited time, and that I'm asking a specific question that the minister isn't answering. And if she's not prepared to answer the question, I'll move on. But if we can go back into the questioning, Minister, you know, you're attacking the Conservatives. Fair enough. You disagree with some of the things we've done. Aid levels as a percentage of gross national income were higher under Stephen Harper consistently. But the question is, what do you mean when you say increase? Is it a real increase, a nominal increase, or an increase as a percentage of GNI? Which is it?
Thank you, Mr. Genis. You know, we have already increased international assistance. We did so in 2018 when we committed an additional $2 billion. We did so this year with an additional $1.1 billion, and we will continue to increase that. You know, it is something that
Mr. Chair, respectfully, the question just isn't being answered. So I want to just ask one brief question, which is, why aren't you the governor on the AIIB? Why is the Minister of Finance the governor on that development bank uniquely and not you?
Mr. Genis, I'm afraid we're out of time. I've given you extra time because of the point of order that was raised. We can circle back to that in a second round of questions. The floor goes now to Dr. Fry for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Minister, for coming on. It's a difficult job, especially since COVID-19 has come about, and we now have to look at extra funding to help all of the problems that COVID-19 has inflicted, especially on the poorest countries. I just wanted to ask you something about, you said earlier on that there is obviously climate change, poverty, causing people to be on the move. Conflict is also the third reason that people are on the move. And you've talked about Africa, and I know that the government has decided that Africa is one of the poorest continents and has the poorest nations there. But I wondered, have you ever recognized or looked at or worked with Europe, i.e. through the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe? There are 57 nations. Many of them are extremely poor because they are post-Soviet nations. They don't have a lot of income. They don't have a lot of resources. And I know that you're very interested in the feminist agenda, and I know that OSCE requires a lot of help with the feminist agenda. But specifically, the hundreds of thousands of people on move in Europe are facing extreme poverty, violence, trafficking, etc. And I know that Canada is not as involved as it would be, because I think we all think that nations on the continent of Europe and South Asia must be rich and they don't fit the mold, but they do. And I was just going to ask you if you feel that it would be possible for your office to look at an OSCE component to what you do in future, because I think you would find that it is needed a lot in some of the poor countries. And secondly, to tell me what you are doing with regard to, again, your portfolio on dealing with refugees and migrants, because women and children are missing in parts of Europe and parts of the world where they are living in camps, etc. And you talked about education, and I'm interested in knowing how you are hoping to help that lost generation of children who don't have any access at all to education. If you can elaborate on that, I'd be pleased. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Dr. Fry, for those questions. I would note that when it comes to Europe, you're correct. I mean, many countries in Europe, are high-income countries who wouldn't qualify for official development assistance, and Canada's international assistance is governed by the ODAAA that requires us to focus our assistance efforts on the poorest and to have poverty alleviation be central to the work that we do. However, when it does come to Europe, Canada has a very significant bilateral program in Ukraine. We work very closely with Ukraine on a number of different issues. But gender equality obviously features very prominently within that, as well as governance and humanitarian response, particularly in the eastern part of Ukraine. I would also note that, we recently provided $450,000 in humanitarian assistance to Armenia through the Red Cross. And so, there are instances where we do provide international assistance to countries that are eligible in the European region. And we obviously work very closely with our colleagues and friends in the European Union on projects right around the world. When it comes to the work that Canada does with refugees, we work extraordinarily closely with the UN High Commission for Refugees. We have projects right around the world to ensure that refugees have access to basic services and their basic rights. When it comes to education, this is something that is extraordinarily important. I remember a conversation that I had right at the outset of the pandemic with Filippo Grandi, the High Commissioner for Refugees, about the fact that we were talking about the number of children that were out of school because of COVID-19 at one point, 1.5 billion children. And we talked about the fact that for many refugee children, they were never in school to begin with. And so that's one of the reasons why the Prime Minister has mandated me to lead an international campaign to increase access to education for displaced children, either refugee or internally displaced. And this is something that we're working on with partners like UNHCR, with Canadian organizations, for the Canadian Partnership for Education Working Group, as well as organizations like Education Cannot Wait, to ensure that we are providing education for children in crisis situations.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now we will go to Mr. Bergeron for 2.5 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks very much again to the Minister. 2.5 minutes is very short, so I will go right to my point and give you a chance to answer. You talked about the impact of COVID-19 on the operations of international assistance efforts. As you know, this committee will be looking into vulnerable populations and the impact of COVID-19 on those populations around the world. So I would like to hear you elaborate a bit on that aspect. To begin with, can we take for granted that countries, not with bad intentions, but that they may use development assistance funding to deal with COVID? How will you deal with that situation in terms of international development assistance. Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. As you mentioned, the pandemic is having a substantial impact on countries around the world. And I remember a conversation with a colleague in Africa who said that my vulnerable population risks dying of hunger, if not from COVID. So this is a hugely difficult situation. With respect to development programs, Canada is working with our partners to make sure that our projects are carried out and that we meet our objectives, even though the pandemic is underway. And that's why we are using this pivot of $350 million this year to make sure that the projects do come to completion. We are working internationally on the debt issue and debt repayment, the interest payments. We are trying to put a pause on those payments so that developing countries can use that money instead to deal with their response to COVID and target their needs there. So we want to ensure that a proper response is taken. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Bergeron.
To Ms. McPherson again for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. And I do want to just express my disappointment that the minister won't give us some of the numbers that we require. And I don't want to be argumentative, but hopefully those numbers could be shared with us, because, you know, if the goal is 0.7% and we can't find out where we're at or how we're getting there, what the path is, it makes it very difficult for parliamentarians to do their job holding us on that path, I guess. But I don't want to waste my time on that, because I don't think we're going to get an answer there. So the two questions I have very, very quickly. The small and medium organization funding, we know, was oversubscribed the last time that it was run. We know we are waiting for it to be implemented again. If the minister could talk a little bit about when that's going to happen. And also, she did speak about the International Campaign for Education for Refugees and Displaced Children. Could she give us some sense of when we can expect news on that, what that looks like, sort of something we can give to the sector to inform them of when that will happen?
Certainly. Thank you for that, Heather. And I'm happy to have Shirley jump in at the end to answer some of the questions on the numbers. I think she probably has them now. But on the campaign for education for displaced children, January 2021 is when we're looking to launch that. We have been having conversations with our partners in the sector, but that is the date that you can expect, and we'll be happy to share information as it becomes available. On the small and medium-sized organizations, very soon is what I can say. We're just finalizing the details, but that will be coming out very, very shortly. We recognize how important this is, and it's been a key priority, both of my predecessor and for me, to make sure that we continue to support small and medium-sized organizations and the important work that they do. I don't know if you want me to turn it over to Shirley to answer your previous question.
You know what? If we could get some of the numbers sent to the committee, that would be
Sure.
that would be awesome. Then we don't have to waste time on that. The
Sure.
last thing that I hopefully have a few seconds to touch on is in terms of direction and control. So we know how important it is that we are changing some of those regulations around direction and control for the sector. We've been pushing very, very hard on that. Can you tell me what your plans are in terms of supporting direction and control? We know right now that organizations spend up to $1 million on compliance, and that's money that is not going to help the world's poorest people. So what's happening in terms of the direction and control piece?
Very briefly, Minister, and then we can circle back in the final round.
Okay, so thank you, Heather, for that question. And I note that Carolyn Leclerc, our Director of Partnerships, is on the line, and perhaps she could speak to that a little bit more broadly. But this has been something that we have been pushing, internally within the department to make sure that we hear and understand the concerns of partners and are working to streamline processes. If there's time, I would turn it over to Carolyn.
I think we'll have to leave it there, just in the interest of fairness. And we've got two more questions and sessions in this round, and then we'll go to a full third round. Mr. Chu, welcome to the committee. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, thank you for availing yourself our job is to hold the government to account, so sometimes we have to ask very difficult questions. Minister, did you or your staff have any discussion with anyone regarding the export of L3 Harris WESCAM drone system this past spring or summer?
No.
Well, that's a straight no. Good, thank you. My next question is, in July, in response to China's enactment of the Hong Kong National Security Law, Canada implemented a ban on the export of sensitive military equipment to Hong Kong. Would the minister be able to provide this committee a list of such equipments that have been prevented from being exported to Hong Kong, and how much was it worth?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chu. I'm the Minister for International Development, and so I don't actually have line of sight into those areas.
Okay. In that case, then let me ask a question that my fellow member has failed to or has not had enough time to ask. In the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the board there, why is the Minister of International Development, yourself, not on the board, but instead of the other minister?
So the Minister of Finance has the authority to determine which multilateral banks Canada is a member of, and this was a decision that was taken by the Minister of Finance. I am the governor for the Regional Development Bank, so the Asian Development Bank, the Latin American Development Bank, the Caribbean Development Bank, and the African Development Bank.
Well, one can argue that the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, it's also regional to support the Chinese investment of One Belt, One Road initiative. So I find it inconsistent that the Minister of Finance is sitting on that instead of you. Is there any comment from you?
So again, this is probably a question best placed for the Minister of Finance. They're also Canada's governor at the World Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. But this is not a decision that that I take.
All right, thank you, Minister. And my last question is, in the middle of the pandemic around the world, has Canada considered aiding international agency in the supply of PPE? Would that be a Ministry of Health to answer that, or would it be yourself? Can you outline to the committee what kind of work has Canada done to support international agency in combating COVID-19?
Certainly. So yes, that is within my responsibility, and we provided support to a number of international organizations such as the African CDC, the WHO, PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, as well as ASEAN, to help them in the procurement of their PPE. Canada did not specifically procure PPE on their behalf, but we provided support for them to be able to make those procurements and distribute it around the world. One of the things that we did that I'm quite proud of is we supported the World Food Programme's logistics operation. As you will recall, in the spring, a number of countries closed their borders, closed their airspaces, and were unable to deliver life-saving interventions, PPE, humanitarian assistance through normal commercial means. And Canada provided the support to the World Food Programme, which is the logistics arm of the United Nations, to make sure that those really important materials could be delivered. And I note that I think Mr. David Beasley is coming to your committee on Thursday, and I'm sure he could speak more to that as well.
Thank you, Minister. That was in the past. Looking forward, what kind of plan does the Government of Canada has in terms of aiding international communities in distributing or helping them with distributing the vaccines that will be coming available? Is there any plan that has struck?
Yeah, so as was announced earlier this fall, Canada has joined the COVAX facility. The COVAX facility is a multilateral initiative with the World Health Organization and the Global Vaccine Alliance to procure vaccines on behalf of member countries that have decided to join, and also on behalf of lower income countries who wouldn't be able to make those purchases on their own. Canada has both joined as a self-financing country, as well as made a significant contribution to the advanced market commitment to support low income countries receive and then distribute the vaccines once they become available.
Thank you very much, Minister. And Mr. Chu, the final round of questions in this set goes to Mr. Fonseca for 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Minister. And Minister, I know we heard it at the outset that you have a wonderful team at home. I know Alberto, your husband, and your little son, Oliver, but you have a top-notch team here in Ottawa, and I'm glad that they're all with you here. Had an opportunity to go through kind of some of their illustrious bios and to see the work that they've done, your deputy minister, assistant deputies, your directors that are with us here today. And Minister, you could jump in here too with some of the questions I'll ask, but some of them will be posed actually to your officials that are with you, because it's quite an opportunity for us to be able to reach out to them and hear about their experience and what they do within the ministry, and then also with you as their captain. So my first question is going to be to Ms. Goldberg, and again, Minister, feel free to jump in at any time. Through your previous experience working as a representative of Canada in Kandahar, Afghanistan, what can you say is the greatest difficulty in maintaining a focus on gender equality with Canada's international aid? I hope I didn't put you on the spot, Ms. Goldberg.
Thank you very much for the question, and I appreciate the opportunity. I would say that actually we're currently fully deploying all the assets in our arsenal to be able to support gender equality through our policy and through our programming. And certainly the lessons that we learned from our experience in Kandahar are playing out in real time. So the support that the minister spoke to previously about women's voice and leadership initiatives, so supporting local human rights defenders and local women's organizations, is perhaps one of the most important things that we can do, but then reinforcing that through the work that we do at the global level through international organizations, through active diplomacy, and through a range of other activities at the regional level as well.
That's true. Minister?
Yeah, I would support Alyssa's intervention on that. I mean, I think, this is a top priority for Canada, and we really are ensuring that we're doing everything possible to support gender equality.
I've got another question for Mr. McDougall. And given your experience working to assist Jordan and help stabilize the region, would you be able to elaborate on your work in providing humanitarian assistance, Mr. McDougall? And again, Minister, please feel free also to weigh in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, I think Jordan is in many ways a textbook case for Canadian humanitarian assistance, and also the link with development. Jordan hosts about 1 million Syrian refugees currently, as well as hundreds of thousands of other ones. And what we were and continue to be able to do there is bring together our humanitarian and development funding to help Jordan strengthen its own national response to supporting refugees. So whether that's direct support to the education system, to social and health systems, and also working with local organizations to build their capacity to support refugees. I think it's been a remarkable success story, and it stands out globally as a country that has between 10 and 20% of its population as refugees with virtually no social unrest. And Canada has played a very important role in achieving that outcome. Thank you.
Minister?
Sure, thank you, Peter, for that. And I guess both of you are named Peter, so both of you for it. But I would just like to build off a little of Peter McDougall's response there, because I think one of the really interesting innovations that Canada has been leading in over the last number of years is when we are responding to a refugee crisis, we are also providing support to the host community as well. And, we've done this both in the instance of the Middle East in terms of our Middle East strategy, but we're also doing it in response to to the Rohingya populations in Bangladesh and in Cox's Bazar, and we're also doing it as we're responding to the Venezuelan migrant crisis. And I think that we've seen this be a very successful strategy for local harmony and the importance of really making sure that we're serving both of those populations to the best of our ability. And I think we're seeing the results of it.
Thank you. And just in the midst of COVID, and we've got your deputy here, Ms. McLean, I would like to ask, you have extensive work with Service Canada, Deputy McLean. What measures could be put in place during this second wave of COVID-19 to help with some of the difficulties that arise for the staff when dealing with casework remotely? And you can say that.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I think we'll have to wait for the answer for another opportunity in the final round, which we will go to now. I will continue to watch the clock carefully because we do have some committee business at the end of our session. Leading off in our third round is Mr. Morantz for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Minister, thank you very much for being here today and answering our questions. Just out of curiosity, when the calculation is done at the end of the year to determine the percentage of GNI that's attributed to ODA, is that calculation dollars actually spent, or is it dollars budgeted? What does it include, spent or budgeted and unspent?
I perhaps will turn to Anik Ouellette on that.
Minister, if I could suggest, I think I might ask Alyssa to speak to that. The OECD Development Assistance is part of her area of expertise. And I would note, Minister, that the question of gross national income is established every December. So that's one of the reasons why, even though we'd be aware of the funding that's been approved, we need to have the denominator of gross national assistance in order to be able to provide accurate percentages.
I understand the data that you need. I only have limited time, though. Really, my question is, are you including monies that have been budgeted and spent, or monies that have been budgeted and unspent? Does someone know the answer to that question?
Alyssa?
Spent.
Pardon me? I couldn't hear.
She said spent. Spent.
Yes.
Just spent. Oh, okay. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, I wanted to ask you about the International Assistance Innovation Program. How much of the $900 million that was announced by your government in February of 2018 has been spent under that program?
So just to clarify, the $900 million was over 5 years. 148 million of that was for this fiscal year. The number that has actually been spent, I believe, is only about $120,000, but Peter McDougall can correct me if I'm wrong. But we are currently in the process of negotiating those projects and are on track to have a number signed by the end of this fiscal year.
Why would a program announced in February of 2018 talking about setting aside $900 million, only have $120,000 spent 2.5 years later?
Yeah, so it's a new program with new requirements and new tools that the Government of Canada has not used before. These are innovative financing tools, and the program once it's announced in 2018, it was stood up in July of 2019. Of course, July of 2019 was just before a federal election, and it took a while to get off the ground. This is an area that is a top priority for me, and I'll be totally honest with you, Mr. Morantz. With COVID happening in the early part of 2019, we had to respond to the issues that were happening because of COVID. But and I would also say that a large part of our department was seconded to the repatriation of Canadians. And so now that
sorry, I just have a limited time, and I appreciate the answer. I did misspeak, though. COVID happened this year, not in the early part of 2019.
Sorry, the early part of 2020, this year.
So over
Apologies.
2 years went by between the time that the program was actually announced and the time of COVID happened. So that's quite a bit of time. Now, just under the sovereign loan program, how much money has been spent since its announcement in February of 2018 of the $600 million that was set aside?
So again, this is over 5 years. And from the time a program is announced to, getting all of, everything sorted out, making sure all the agreements are in place, everyone understands what the objectives are, that takes time. And I think that's a fair thing. On the sovereign loans program, these are currently are being negotiated right now. So while money has not been spent, they are on track to be completed in the near term.
So no money has been spent under the sovereign loan program, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so do you think that it is a 5-year program, but we're 2.5 years in? Do you really think that?
No, it's a 5-year program, but starting this fiscal year. So we're not actually 2 years in. It started in July 2019, and that started with putting out a call for proposals and having conversations with different partners. So that money will still be allocated into the future. And these are new things that we're doing as a government of Canada, and so we want to make sure that we.
Are you happy with
Minister,
the progress?
Mr. Moran, my apologies. I think we'll have to leave it there. This was over 5 minutes. Okay. The next round goes to Ms. D'Abruzzen again for 5 minutes, please.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Sorry about that. So I was thanking you for being here, but I wanted to talk about food and food policy, because that's an area that I'm particularly interested in. And I was looking up some information about how 2 billion people suffer from malnutrition in one form or another around the world, and that women and girls are at the highest risk, that 60% of the world's hungry are women, according to the World Food Program. I'm wondering if you can focus a bit for what we are doing now on food and nutrition, and also because you had mentioned earlier that we had taken particular action once all the lockdowns came into effect in March. What did we do to deal with food security because of COVID?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Julie, for that question. And when people ask me what keeps me up at night, it is the number of people who are going hungry and the increase in people who are going hungry. And David Beasley will probably tell you this on Thursday when you speak to him directly, but the World Food Program is projecting a doubling of people in acute food insecurity this year, and we are seeing it play out in real time. Canada's approach to food security is broad. We support programs like the World Food Program, for example, that delivers food both to people in crisis, but also provides a lot of school meals. And one of the areas that was of great concern is when
un des aspects qui nous a beaucoup préoccupés, c'était la fermeture des écoles et la fermeture des programmes.
I'm so sorry, Minister, but the French translation has gone into I can't hear the Minister now.
Madam Clerk, let's suspend for a minute and see if that's a persistent problem or if it's fleeting.
I think it's resolved now.
Is it resolved? Okay, Minister, please continue.
Okay, sorry about that. But where was I? On school feeding programs. So through support from Canada and other donors, the World Food Program was able to quickly pivot to delivery programs for a number of children in need. We also provided support to the Food and Agricultural Organization, which provided support to local farmers, as well as ensuring that they can continue to access markets, which was really important in a number of developing countries with severe lockdowns. We also provided support to the International to IFAD that is doing a lot of work to ensure that particularly female farmers continue to have access to markets. And then when it comes to nutrition, we provided additional resources to Nutrition International, which is a Canadian organization that ensures particularly that adolescent girls get access to nutrition. So there are a whole range of activities, and I could talk about this for a lot longer, but this has been a top priority and will continue to be to ensure that, particularly for those in the humanitarian space, that we continue to make sure that those in need have access to both food and nutrition.
Thank you for that. You mentioned, and that's an unbelievably disturbing number, that there would be a doubling of insecurity worldwide because of COVID. Have you seen anything to indicate whether that's impacting women and girls disproportionately, or if that's just a straight doubling?
I don't have the specific numbers on whether women and girls are more impacted, but I think anecdotally, that is certainly what we're seeing on the ground. I mean, we know that often, in lower income households and developing countries, that women and girls are often the last to eat if they eat at all. And so that is certainly something that we are very concerned with. And I would note, this maybe seems tangential, but we're also very concerned with the number of adolescent girls who won't be returning to school. There are a number of countries where, for example, if you get pregnant, you're not allowed to return to school. And so UNFPA is predicting 10 million adolescent girls not returning to schools even once they open. And again, that's going to be very concerning when it comes to access to food because of the role that a lot of schools play in accessing food and nutrition, particularly for girls.
Okay. And if I can say just quickly, because I see I'm running out of time, what can we do, in a very short answer, to try and to alter that so that girls are not kept out of school following the pandemic, that they're not disproportionately impacted in that way?
Very briefly, please.
Okay, sure. Very briefly, there's a number of things that we can do and we're trying to do, but certainly working with women's rights activists and organizations around the world is really important, particularly to have them advocate to change some of those laws and unfair discriminatory practices, but also then supporting adolescent girls and encouraging them to return to school. The other thing that we know is is also working with organizations and local communities on harmful practices like child and early forced marriage as well, so that we can continue to make sure that girls and adolescent girls have every opportunity at success.
Thank you, Minister. We may have a chance to go back in response to another colleague's question. Maintenant, la parole est à Monsieur Bergeron. Encore une...
We will now go to Mr. Bergeron, 2.5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Minister, we know that traditionally in development assistance targets a certain number of countries selected by Canada based on certain criteria that can vary from one government to another. My question is very simple. You have some latitude. Can the government react efficiently when crises occur? For example, the humanitarian crisis in Yemen as a result of the war by incursions by Saudi Arabia that we are selling arms to that are involved in that war. Can we help populations that are in crisis? There's another example, the Karabakh region, their houses have been destroyed, and so are there ways that we can help to deal with those situations in those two cases? The answer is yes, definitely, to both questions. We spend about $100 million a year on humanitarian assistance when there are crises. Some of that money goes every fiscal year to crises that we can identify. We are providing aid in about a dozen situations where there is war or crisis. In Yemen, we are very much involved, and I expect to be able to offer additional funding for that region soon, and Nagorno-Karabakh as well. We are helping the Red Cross in that area, and so we do have the capacity to respond to crises when humanitarian crises happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may just very quickly, $400,000 in Nagorno-Karabakh doesn't really go very far. Perhaps we should increase that amount. But for those listening, could you, and for the use of our committee, could you please give us the list of situations where the government has responded to a crisis over the past few months? Of course. We can send the list to the committee. Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Next, the floor goes to Ms. McPherson again for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think maybe this will be a little bit of a cleanup round for me. So if I could get those numbers on the percentage of money being spent on bilateral, multilateral, and partnership branch, that would be great.
Oh, hi there, it's Shirley. This fiscal year, we're actually projecting about $63 million to be spent through our multilateral channels, about 17% through our Canadian CSOs, and then the rest would be through our bilateral channels. Of course, these numbers could shift as we progress through the fiscal year, and our spending is confirmed at the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you very much. And my next question, I guess, would be for Ms. Leclerc. Could you talk a little bit about, I know we cut you off and you didn't get a chance to respond regarding direction and control.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to take part in this conversation. As you know, this is an issue that comes under the Income Tax Act, so this is really under the jurisdiction of the Minister of Finance. The Government of Canada has created a committee to deal with the charitable sector that is co-chaired by civil society, and there's going to be a working group that looks at this issue specifically. There is a representative from the international development sector involved, and the Government of Canada wants to understand the issues very clearly. We are also working with Revenue Canada and Finance Canada to update the directive.
My very last question, I'll be very quick, is about the ACT Accelerator. So we know that $100 million has been given to the ACT Accelerator, $580 million for development and humanitarian impacts. Can you talk about when that will be spent, Minister? Will that be spent by the end of this year or by the end of this fiscal year?
By the end of this fiscal year.
Thank you. Look, I'm ahead of time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. McPherson. That's always appreciated. The next series is a 5-minute series to Mr. Diot, please. Sir, I think you're on mute. Just double check your microphone.
Okay, that should work. For some reason, it wasn't working with this thing. So, Minister, thanks for being here today. I've got a large Ukrainian Canadian population in my riding of Edmonton-Griesbach, and they and a lot of other Canadians across the country continue to be concerned about the state of human rights and democracy in Ukraine. So how much money is being allocated by your department to support development in Ukraine, and how does the money being spent correspond to the allocation since, say, 2015 or so?
Thank you, Mr. Diot. So we provide $50 million annually to Ukraine, and our support helps to build a strong and accountable democracy. As you mentioned, that is something that is very important for us and contributes to peace and security in Ukraine. We also work on economic development, including through direct support to vulnerable populations, such as conflict-affected populations, especially women. And we are very engaged with, our friends and colleagues in Ukraine. I remember having a meeting with the previous Ukrainian cabinet when I was the parliamentary secretary for international development, and they remain a very important partner for us.
So in April 2019, I had the privilege to be an official observer in the Ukrainian presidency election through the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. So I was able to see firsthand what the Ukrainians' commitment to democratic principles. So what tangible things is Canada doing to ensure the strength of that democracy in Ukraine? Can you give me a few examples, please?
Yes, although I may commit to come back to you more specifically, as I don't have the Ukraine program here in front of me, but I know that we are working with the judicial system in Ukraine through the Canadian Judicial Service. They're providing direct support in Ukraine, and there are a number of other initiatives, and I would be happy to send you full details of our program in Ukraine if that would be of interest.
I certainly appreciate that. There are also non-governmental organizations that Canada is working with in Ukraine, I would imagine. And is the bulk of our work with Canadian-based organizations, NGOs, or large multilateral NGOs? Can you describe some of that work?
Again, I would want to get back to you on the specifics of it, but we work with a range of partners in Ukraine, as in other bilateral partners, some of which would be Canadian NGOs, some of which would be international NGOs, and some of which would be multilateral partners.
Right. And what about the RCMP? How many RCMP members are currently in Ukraine as part of the Canadian police arrangement?
Again, I would have to get back to you. That would be public safety that would be specifically responsible for that.
I believe you had mentioned that, first of all, just to recap, I wanted to get the number of money, the amount of money that Canada is giving in foreign aid right now.
Total or to Ukraine?
Yeah, total. To all countries.
To all countries?
I think you said it was about 5 billion, 4.9?
4.6 billion, I believe. Is that?
I thought I heard 4.9.
Well, there's, sorry, it's right here. So our total ODA is 5.9 billion, but that includes multilateral development banks as well as direct bilateral programs with countries.
Okay. One of those countries you said in the top 10 was Syria. So what would you tell Canadians who are worried that that country being in a state of anarchy practically, what would you tell Canadians who are worried that that money might not be getting to where it should be going?
Sure. And let me just clarify that, that's not money that is going to support the government of Syria. That's going to the humanitarian crisis in Syria and the people who have been displaced or are in need of, housing, food, access to services for sexual and gender-based violence, education for those individuals. And that's being delivered through trusted international partners. Obviously, Syria is an extremely fragile context, but it is one where there are extraordinary needs, and that is one of the reasons why they are one of the top recipients. But it is serving the population. It does not go to the government of Syria.
Minister, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Diot. The next round in this, the next series in this round goes to Ms. Sahota, and again, it's a 5-minute round.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to actually pick up from there. It kind of delves into the line of questioning I had. What would you say, Minister, to Canadians or people that would have skepticism or worries that were just mentioned by my colleague about money going to organizations that perhaps are in countries operating where, Mr. Diot, you're okay. That money is going to organizations in countries where perhaps there is conflict and there may not be as much of a trust in or transparency in their system.
So thank you very much, Ruby, for that question. And what I would say is that GAC has very well developed and fine-tuned due diligence processes and tracking of the money that we send in international assistance. And of course, that is heightened in conflict and fragile settings, recognizing the challenging situations that these present. However, we do work with trusted partners, both NGO and multilateral partners with whom we have deep relationships. There's a strong audit function, and we track the money that we spend very, very closely and very, very carefully. And of course, our main objective at all times is to ensure that those who are targeted as beneficiaries are the ones that are receiving the assistance. And when it comes to humanitarian assistance, that is extraordinarily important.
When it comes to, I know you've touched upon it a little bit, but I wanted to give you more opportunity to talk about the work that's been done for Rohingya refugees and what the state of their camps or, the state of the people is at this time. And, it's a very concerning issue to a lot of people still. I know that it was highlighted in the news a lot previously last year, but now we're not hearing much about it ever since COVID has started. But I imagine with the COVID issue layered on top, it must be a really, a disaster.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I know for a number of members on this committee, the plight of the Rohingya is a top priority for you. And of course, it is for me and the government as well. And as you probably recall, in 2018, we committed a $300 million strategy for the Rohingya, supporting, Rohingya populations that are in Cox's Bazar and Bangladesh, as well as, working with and trying to ensure humanitarian assistance and access to those that remain in Myanmar as well. Of course, with COVID-19, this has been of great concern, and I've been in touch with partners, particularly in the UN system and humanitarian operators on this issue to try and stay as current as possible on the impact this is having on Rohingya communities. I think some, concerns that we have seen are with regards to access in and out of the camps for humanitarian workers, making sure that there's transparency in terms of, what the actual situation is on the ground. I've had some good conversations with our Canadian mission in Bangladesh on this, who have been keeping me informed. And of course, like for everyone else, there are challenges with regards to access to healthcare and access to education, the impact that this is having on increased gender-based violence, and ensuring that children and women are protected and have access to protection services. There are a whole range of issues. We haven't seen a huge number of cases of COVID-19 in the camps, but we also recognize that there has also been a slowdown in testing as well. But we remain in constant contact with our partners on the ground to try and get the most up-to-date information.
As to the $300 million that was invested in the strategy, how has it been spent?
So it has been spent in a number of areas. As I mentioned earlier, a large portion of that is obviously specifically directed at the refugees in Cox's Bazar, but we also have programming to support the local community that was already there in Cox's Bazar as well. It goes towards humanitarian assistance, it goes towards education, it goes towards providing access to sexual health and reproductive rights, and also to ensuring access to protection services for those who are experiencing violence. Thank you,
Minister. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Sahota. We are at the end of 3 fulsome rounds of questions. I wanted to get a sense from the committee whether everybody has had a chance to ask their questions or whether there's some burning questions that could still be accommodated. The other thing we should keep in mind is that we do have some committee business on the schedule in order to help us move forward with our study that's on the books with respect to COVID and the context of fragile states and conflict zones. Can I quickly get a sense of the views of members on where we are? Yes, Mr. Genuis.
Sure, I'll just say, Mr. Chair, I know from our perspective, we're hoping for the full 2 hours that had been previously agreed unanimously by the committee, and we're prepared to stay past the 5:30 time to ensure committee business is complete.
Okay. Optimistically, I don't think we need a lot of time for committee business. I don't want to prejudge that. Are there members who have had their rounds of questions and who do not wish to ask any further questions? Maybe we can just sort of arrive at some middle ground instead of doing another full round for 20 minutes. Quick sense. Dr. Fry, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. There is one particular thing that I know that Canada has led the world in since 1995, and that is the issue of looking at paid and unpaid work. I know that's in your mandate. Can you tell us where
Dr.
you
Fry,
are right now?
I'm sorry, Dr. Fry. I was just trying to get a sense of where members are with respect to continuing.
Like she has questions to ask, though, so that's great.
Jump the gun there.
Maybe we can just, if those of you who would like to ask additional questions, if we can sort of agree to 3-minute slots and let the clerk know, and then she can feed me a list and we can continue. If we can finish short of 5:30, great. If we have to go to 5:30, we will. And then hopefully with a very short extension, finish our committee business. That's my proposal, but I'm in your hands. Ms. McPherson and then Mr. Genuis.
I was just putting my name forward that I do have lots more questions.
Okay.
So when we do a round, if you'd like me to start, I can ask that question now, but I'm also happy to wait my turn as the member of the fourth party.
Mr. Genuis?
Yeah, so I had some additional questions I wanted to ask. Maybe if I could just have the 5-minute round. I think I'm the only conservative that will have additional questions. Correct me if I'm wrong, colleagues, but I think one more 5-minute round for the 4 of us would be sufficient.
Okay, why don't we lead you off with that? In the meantime, if colleagues can indicate to the clerk that they also wish to speak, we may not do a full round if there's no interest in doing another full round. But yes, Mr. Genuis, go ahead, please. 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Minister, you may not agree with this characterization, but all of us are hearing from stakeholders who are concerned and have a perception that the government recently is doing much less with Canadian charities, Canadian-based organizations, and instead funneling more dollars through UN-affiliated organizations. And my perspective, I think the perspective of many other parliamentarians, is that it is very important to be working with Canadian organizations, consulting Canadian stakeholders, being in constant dialogue with them and drawing on their expertise. However, there's one Canadian organization that has done relatively well under your government, and I note the record of significant spending through We Charity on international development assistance during the tenure of your government. So I wonder if you can tell us how much the government of Canada has given to We Charity for international development since taking office.
So just getting to your first question, Garnet, I also share your passion for working with Canadian organizations, and this is a top priority for me. And I would note that we've actually been increasing on a year-over-year basis the percentage of our ODA that's spent on Canadian partners. In 2017-2018, it was 22%. In 2019-20, it was 25%. And I aim to continue with the 25% on Canadian partners as a minimum. On We, the answer is 0.
Okay, Minister, the records will show, I believe, that the government has spent at least $2 million on We Charity activities in Kenya. You've said it's 0, and I would invite you to just review your departmental records and submit a follow-up answer in writing, because the subsequent questions presume that there was spending through We. The NGO board in Kenya had in 2017 raised significant concerns about regulatory mischief involving We Charity. and yet the records I was able to find through the Library of Parliament show $2 million worth of spending in the 2017-2019 period. So I'm just curious to know if you or your department was aware of the allegations from the NGO board in Kenya of regulatory mischief, and if that awareness impacted decisions to spend money through WE either internationally or domestically.
My understanding, Garnet, is that we have not spent any money on WE from an international development point of view. I will certainly follow up with the department, as that is the information that I have, and we'll look into this further. But I have asked on numerous occasions, and there's nothing in our records to indicate that we have. But certainly I will follow up on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Just following some questions from Ms. McPherson, I wanted to, this is more of a comment, but share that Conservatives have the same concerns about the direction and control issue, and we believe that action is needed in response to the concerns of stakeholders on that. Now, to follow up questions about getting dollars specifically in Syria towards the most vulnerable people. Various articles have been written, such as in The Guardian, for example, about how money spent on through UN-affiliated organizations has unfortunately led to the patronizing of close Assad allies. Money from UN agencies spent, for instance, through a charity that is directed by President Assad's wife. UN staff running up a $9.5 million bill at the Four Seasons Hotel in Damascus, which is co-owned by Syria's tourism ministry. Now, some of these organizations that are benefiting from cooperation with UN entities in the delivery of aid are actually on sanctions lists, but they don't apply to the activities of UN organizations. Do you have a concern about Canadian dollars funding UN organizations that are then patronizing Syrian government-affiliated entities while delivering aid in Syria?
So I would just note that from the Canadian government's perspective, we work with trusted partners and we audit all of the projects that we fund.
But you do work with UN-affiliated organizations that are running aid into Syria, right? Like it is the UN that you're funding to deliver those programs when it comes to Syria, right?
We work with a number of humanitarian organizations, and we follow international humanitarian law of neutrality to make sure that we're delivering to people in need. And that is a top priority and principle for the Canadian government, and we will continue to do that. And we audit our projects as needed.
I'm sorry, we'll have to leave it there.
In the Guardian, right?
Mr. Jenners, we've agreed to a 5-minute round.
Thank you.
The floor is going to Dr. Fry now for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I had started my question. Sorry for jumping the gun, everyone. What I wanted to ask the minister was about is Canada has actually led and created much of the data way back in the late 1990s about looking at the issue of paid and unpaid work. Even in Canada here, paid and unpaid work are not really recognized. And I know one of the things in your mandate is to look at the issue of paid and unpaid work. What is the plan of action? How far have you gone in moving this agenda forward? Thanks.
Thank you so much for that question, Hetty. And it's an issue that I'm particularly excited and passionate about when it comes to paid and unpaid care work. And it's one that I think is incredibly important to advance gender equality. I mean, we see it here at home. We know how important it is for women's participation in the labor force, but also for their empowerment and their autonomy. And so integrating this into our international development work is currently underway. We're going to have some projects to announce very soon in this area, and we are looking at how we integrate this into existing projects when it comes to women's economic empowerment, but also having some standalone projects and working with some of our international partners to be more targeted and specific when it comes to care work. And so there's some really exciting work going on right now within the department and within IDRC, as well as with some of our partner organizations in this space. And I'm really excited about the leadership role that Canada's taking on to bring this more broadly into development work.
Actually, payment for unpaid work, which are mostly done by women, as we know, around the world, can also not only help younger women and women who are at home looking after kids, etc., but it actually helps senior women as they retire. If they have been able to be paid for all of the caregiving work that they do within the house that they have never been paid for, but in wealthier countries, people pay others to do, it would really make a difference to the poverty of seniors.
Absolutely. And also, you know, in terms of productivity and, you know, ability to have more autonomy in general, women at all ages, you know, face a heavy burden of care work, whether it's for children or caring for family members. And it's something that, you know, we recognize is something that needs to be integrated across our development programming. And I'm just very excited about this work.
Do I have any more time, Chair?
Dr. Fry, you've got 2 minutes.
2 minutes quickly then. In many countries, I know Canada is interested in this and has done a lot of work on it, but how are you working with countries that do not see the value of that work or don't wish to see the value of the unpaid work that women do in caregiving?
Yeah, so I mean, Canada uses our voice in different fora. So it could be within different multilateral fora at the United Nations to raise these issues. It could be in bilateral conversations that I have with partner governments around the world, and also with local civil society organizations. I think, you know, one of the best things that we can do as Canada is support local civil society around the world who are advocating for these issues to, you know, make the changes necessary within their own countries. And so we try to raise our voice at every opportunity that we have to make sure that, you know, we're supporting the people on the ground who are doing this important advocacy.
Dr. Fry, thank you very much. Thank you, Minister. Maintenant, la parole est à M. Bergeron, encore une fois, pour 2 minutes et demie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much for 2.5 minutes. I want to come back to the study that this committee will be starting very soon about the impact of COVID on vulnerable populations. In the mandate letter, it indicates that Canada's role in education would be increased to 10% of our ODA, and that we would work in particular with displaced and refugee children. So right now, where are we at with that goal? Have we started to work to help refugee and displaced children? Has there been any increase in our international assistance in that area? Or to come back to the question that I asked earlier, what is the timing over the next few months or the next few years to get there? Thank you for that question. We are right now at 9% of our international assistance budget for education, and so we are getting close to our 10% goal for next fiscal year. So this was something that we have talked about going back to in our campaign. There is also the Charlevoix program that addresses girls in primary school, and Canada is working on that in the context of the G7. We are also working to help displaced and refugee children in collaboration with our partners, the High Commissioner for Refugees at the UN, and as well another organization called Education Cannot Wait. We are working with those organizations to make sure that our campaign will be as much benefit as possible. How much time do we have left? 15 seconds. Okay, I won't ask the minister to answer a question in 5 seconds. So thank you for being here this long with us. Thank you, Minister.
I learned that the last time that as a government of Canada we funded We in Kenya was in 2008. So I believe that was under Prime Minister Harper. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bergeron. The final set of questions that'll take us to the end of our scheduled time with the Minister goes to Ms. McPherson for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you have 2.5 minutes left, Minister, and then you're free. I did just want to clarify, I know that We Charity and Free the Children is not considered a good development partner. So I wanted to clarify that was for Free the Children and We, and I could see that we likely wouldn't be funding them much, but thank you for that clarification. The question that I actually have for you is on climate change. So at the moment in time, at the forefront of the government's minds will be a response to and a recovery to COVID-19, of course. And the benefits of building resilience to shocks has been made clear during this pandemic, as so many other things have been made very, very clear. As governments work to protect their citizens and recover, it is essential that climate change is addressed at the same time. This fiscal year marks the end of Canada's current climate finance package. How will the upcoming climate finance package continue Canada's leadership on gender and climate change and support women and girls as they undertake climate action and recognize that Canada has an important role to play and a fair share to contribute?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Heather. And, I think if there's one thing that COVID-19 has taught us, it's how interconnected the world is. And that applies to to climate change as well. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of people recognizing that the impacts that we're feeling because of COVID-19 are just a microcosm of the impact that climate change will have. And so absolutely, Canada will continue in our leadership role with climate change moving forward. And as you probably note in my mandate letter from the Prime Minister, I'm tasked with working on the intersection of women's rights and climate change. And so we've already undertaken a couple of initiatives, particularly with IFAD, that works primarily with small-scale agriculturalists who are primarily women in sub-Saharan Africa on building climate resilience and adaptation. But we have been consulting with partners here in Canada and around the world over the past 8 months that are helping to feed into and build into our next climate financing initiative.
I would encourage the Minister to ensure that a significant chunk of that investment is channeled through Canadian civil society organizations. As the Minister will know, the share of Canadian civil society organizations in terms of ODA has shrunk over the last several years. And while we may be on an upward trend, it is still not back to where I feel it should be. And wonder if the Minister could comment on where she feels it would be appropriate for us to have in terms of the division between multilateral and civil society investment, I guess.
Very briefly for a closing comment, Minister.
Okay, so all to say that I agree with you, Heather. I think that it's very important for us to continue working with CSOs and to continue to be on an upward trajectory in terms of growth. And the colleagues from the department will know that I am pushing them every day on this and very much advocating and working with our Canadian CSO partners because they are important and integral to Canada's ability to deliver effective assistance. So thank you for your advocacy on their behalf as well.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson. Thank you, Minister. Minister Gould, thank you so much. Thank you to you, your entire team, for being with us today, for your testimony, for your time and your service. On behalf of the committee, it's a very productive and very fulsome conversation. We will let you depart. I wonder if I can keep colleagues back for a couple of minutes just to explore some options that we have inside of the next 15 minutes with respect to committee business. But thank you very much, and we'll let you and your team disconnect.
Okay, thank you. Merci tout le monde.
Thank you. Merci. Colleagues, of options. We have about 15 minutes. We have a hard stop at 5:45 because of other committees that need to do their work. We have a full slate on Thursday. We've got 3 items of business, including some questions of approvals. We can do a couple of things. We can do this in public, if you agree. We can transition out quickly and come back in camera as originally scheduled. Or we can punt. I don't think we should punt it. That's my view. It's not your view, but you may share it simply because of the COVID study that's on the slate and that requires some approvals from us. what's the sense of the committee? Should we take committee business and keep it in a public setting, or should we go into camera quickly and then see if we can get done in the next 15 minutes? Ms. Sahota.
In camera.
Oh, in camera. I was going to say stay public because it takes very long to transfer into camera.
I'm fine public.
Okay. I think we need a pretty unanimous view. I don't want to vote on in camera or not. I think we should, if there's colleagues that feel strongly that we should go into camera, we can. I think we were faster last time. We got into camera within about 5 minutes. That gives us about 10 minutes of discussion time.
I said stay public, right? That's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think their views to the contrary. I just want to make sure that people are comfortable with their discussion.
I was confused. Maybe I had misspoken myself as well.
So let's duck out. Let's come back and let's focus on what we can get done in the next 10 minutes. Does that work?
Mr. Chair, just has an in-camera link been sent around already?
Yes.
Or?
Yes, it has. Yes.
It has.
I believe it's been distributed. Madam Clerk, could you just verify? I think we have it.
It's on the same email.
Yes, Mr. Chair, is in the same email.
Okay. So let's reconnect in a few minutes in camera.
Je ne sais pas pourquoi il a demandé l'avis des gens.